And roll call. Melinda Sheehy.
Present.
Zhenya Shevchenko.
Present.
And Tamara Lee Pinard, present. And Dan Cobb is absent this evening, excused absence. So minutes approval for March 7th.
Chairman, I approve the minutes as circulated. Or I move to approve the minutes as circulated. They seemed good to me.
There you go. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments? Okay. All those in favor? Show it as unanimous. Information exchange.
Great. So just keeping you guys posted of what is going on. We are talking about a potential residential solar ordinance, which would put some regulations on the use of solar panels, either ground-mounted or roof-mounted, for on-site use, like just for a home or a business, not the big commercial ones that we have now. So that's something that's kind of in the works. We've had one workshop with council, and we'll probably be coming back to workshop and working through some of those details. So that's on the docket. The plans have been filed for the pending projects that were approved, the storage on Lewiston Road and the Lions Point amendment where they shifted the lot line a little bit. Those have been filed with the registry. It looks like the Mayall Road subdivision proposal of Mr. Gervais is probably the next to be coming up, most likely in July. And the Ramsdale one is probably on hold at this point. Site work is ongoing at Area Estates and at Campbell Acres, that Lieutenant's Drive one, so those are both underway. The one note I wanted to make sure to clarify with you folks is the planning board stipends are going to be, from here on out, broken up on the same payment schedule as the council ones. So they'll be paid out to you in December and in June. So it'll be half in December and half in June going forward, just so you know. I think you are all in the system and good to go.
Can you just remind me, what did that end up being?
The stipend is $500.
Oh,
So it's $250 in December and $250 in June.
Oh, that's very generous. Thank you, Town of Gray.
Yes, for all your service and showing up and doing this work for the town. Yeah, that is the gist of the updates for now.
Wonderful. Next on the agenda is the zoning ordinance amendments, and Tammy Munson, lead CEO with the town, is here to talk to that before we open it for public hearing.
Sure. Tammy Munson, Code Enforcement Officer. There should be a memo in your packet that was from the town manager and I, suggesting two basic changes to the ADU dwelling unit standards, accessory dwelling unit standards. One, it would be, and just to give you an overview, one is basically to increase the square footage from the 750 allowed square feet to 800 square feet. The reason for that is because it's basically to get more in line with common construction practices. You know, a lot of times houses are 24 by 36 or 20 by 30, and you know, when you start using odd numbers and breaking up numbers that way, it results in more waste. So this is just to get more in line with standard construction practices. And it's 50 square feet, so it's not a significant change. The other one is the ownership standards. Currently, right now, it states that the ADU, I think, needs to be, the single-family home needs to be occupied by the owner. And just to be more consistent with the spirit of the intent of the ADU law by the state of Maine, we're asking to have that removed. There have been other communities that I've worked in that don't have this. I feel that I've seen specific language as well, and say, you know, I'll give you an example where I worked the last time. Their language specifically said that you could have an accessory dwelling unit for 2 family members. And so I had a mother that built a dwelling unit onto her house for her son and his 2 children. And they were concerned, because there was that stipulation in there, that they could be removed from that. I think that the intent of having that language in there is because of people feel that owner occupancy means a place that's better taken care of or cared about more, and that's not necessarily true, but it's also, there are other mechanisms in place and other laws for us to enforce trash violations, various violations that having it in here would make it's difficult to enforce, but it also can put limitations on different scenarios that you don't know what people can find themselves in. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what our proposal is. If you have any questions at all, I'm happy to entertain them.
Any questions?
One thing like I was going to ask, there is potential that, for example, I have like 8 acres, right? My zoning minimum is 4 acres. So I build this unit next to my house, then I subdivided my property. So another person to whom I will sell the land, like will build like the same unit too. So, if you have like 30 acres, 40 acres, I mean, you will have almost like the same.
Except you'd have subdivision law if you
Yep. Yeah, I
divided
think
it too many
That piece
times.
is separate. There are a lot of pieces to this law, to this law 2003, and it gets complicated fast. But the ADU is allowed to be attached to any single-family home. The pieces that Tammy's talking about in the change tonight don't address any of that. I'm happy to
Okay.
go over any of that with you if you'd like to get into the
Okay.
weeds on that law. We've tried to create some cheat sheets about different scenarios to make it clear, because
Okay.
there are so many. This one is just about the size and the owner occupancy requirements. But yes, it does increase density in places where you don't have the same amount of square footage required for an ADU as you do for the home.
But like that can
Yes.
lead in future to changing the zoning from like rural.
The feel of it,
Yeah. And the ADU law is dictated by the state too, so we didn't have a choice about that. We
Okay.
had to pass an ADU law. But we had a choice about the size, and we had a choice about the owner occupancy. And what I think I'm hearing, and it makes sense after considering it, is that it's both of those two limitations that effectively work against increasing affordable housing, which is a goal of the law, and make it more, if these aren't passed, they create some unintended consequences that aren't really, wasn't the purpose of implementing these two standards anyway, so
Correct. They could, and, to be honest with you, the majority of the people that have come in to see me, it's because we have had a lot of interest in it, most of it will end up being homestead living.
Yeah.
It's gonna be either parents doing it for their adult children.
Yeah.
Because they can't afford to live on
Yeah.
their own. Adult children living with their parents
Yeah.
because they, can't afford to buy a house, or they need to take care of their parents eventually.
Yep.
And those are the scenarios that I've seen play out. So, I don't see this as being problematic. I don't see a big issue with this. I think these are two really pretty simple changes that that we're proposing.
Yep.
If I may.
Should I open public hearing first?
You can do that if you want, sure, I can do it that way too.
Might as well get that out.
All right, okay. I'll just open the public hearing on zoning ordinance 402.7.9 amendments.
I just wanted to add for background too, when we created the ordinance, the law was new, and frankly, the rules are still even under construction. So we wanted to be conservative. There was some concern about the size of ADUs, especially in existing neighborhoods that have kind of a look and feel to them. I believe, Tammy, there's a rule in there that the ADU can't be bigger than the primary dwelling, is that correct?
Correct. I think there might be something that says it can't be more than 90%
Yes.
of the footprint, as well as the 800. So it's already limited.
So I think there'll be, so we intentionally, the council was pretty conservative about what we created to start, knowing that we could change it. So I suspect there will be other changes that come along too, like these two.
Correct. And to echo what Kristen said, the LD 2003, it's very complicated in the scenarios. But essentially, it's mandated by the state, and essentially, they've eliminated single-family home zoning. And I know, and it's even a hard concept for me to wrap that I can have 3 units on my own property in an older established subdivision where I live. It's the state mandating it, so.
I think it's limited in the ordinance to 1.
Yes.
One, yeah, so, but the
Okay.
single plus
Yeah.
would equal 2, right?
Though I think just a lot can have up to 4, correct, right? If it's just a lot without a dwelling unit on it.
Up to 4 dwelling units, not ADUs
Okay.
specifically.
So as Kristen said, it's pretty
Yeah.
convoluted.
Yeah, you can go.
There's multiple, I mean, if you all want to chat about that,
Yeah.
it's great. I'm gonna go.
Well,
We'll support group.
hopefully
Yeah.
these places will not turn into the busy bee.
Oh, yeah, I know.
If I could, I would just mention to you, as a town, the town of Gray did have the accessory apartments ordinance prior to this law. So there was an accessory apartment allowance in the town of Gray anyway. It was capped, I believe, at 600
Yeah.
square feet.
Yeah, it started at 600.
Yeah, it was a 600 square feet, so it's a tiny apartment, but they were allowed. And the ownership, the occupancy ownership is a carryover from your
Okay.
previous accessory apartment
Right.
ordinance that, like Dan said, was
Yeah.
carried over to be conservative and kind of keep some of what you could keep.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback on what Dan said, I think that a lot of communities, at least in my experience as well, when they first had these ordinances, did have those standards in there. But when a lot of these ordinances went in place, it was it was just different living then. It was different times, and this is, things have changed, and now there's, affordable housing crisis and state mandates, and I think, like I said, it's just to be more consistent with the spirit of the law.
Well, and this was a question for me when I first moved here, because I was like, oh, I have this small house, I'd like to build a garage, wouldn't it be great if I could put a unit above it and maybe, might have a place for my son? Well, at the ordinance at the time said, well, if your garage is attached to your house, you can do it, but if it's not attached, you can't.
I had the same problem.
What?
Yeah,
Why?
correct. That was another
made
thing
no
that was in there.
sense.
Yeah,
I didn't
I
want it
remember that.
attached, but who cares? Like, it's
Yeah.
the same. Anyway.
Plumbing code is affected by that too.
Right, right.
And like I said,
And
it's
insurance.
there are other ways to enforce different things, and, even though you might have the best intentions, there can be a lot of unintended consequences for people that
Yeah.
prohibit them from genuinely wanting to create something
Yeah,
that is truly an ADU for
yeah,
family.
yeah, excellent.
Right. Any other comments, folks? All right, and seeing nobody online, I will close public hearing, and thank you so much,
Thank you.
Tammy, for coming tonight and sharing
Sure.
your expertise, and also for the excellent memo that you put together with
Thank you.
the.
Thank you very much.
All right, so now we have new business. We have the proposed planning board process flow chart, and no formal vote is needed on this, but input is definitely welcome. And Kristen, I don't know if you wanted to kick us off on this at all?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you folks had any input on kind of the content here. It's obviously taken from the ordinance, the processes that are in there, trying to break it out for the to-do list on, how it works. So if you're an applicant, the idea would be to kind of share this with applicants so they know what the steps are. And it helps me too, to be quite frank. It kind of breaks it out as more of a step-by-step, rather than having to dig through the ordinance and see like what comes next in this section and then this and what applies. So we were just thinking it might be a nice piece to kind of guide all of us through what the steps are. So I was looking for your input. It's probably something I'll look to make more user-friendly looking and break up a little bit more, and probably work with Kyle to get on the website if we can get that okayed. And yeah, so just looking for particularly your input on the content before we start trying to pretty it up.
I think I don't have my glasses right this minute, but, oh, thank you. Oh, wow, it's like I can see. Can you just remind me, oh, yep, open space. All right, so we've got them included in the open
Yep.
space. That was the one thing
Yep.
that I wanted to make sure as early in the process as possible to include them. So that's
Yeah, that
right
was
there now
input
that I
Yeah.
can see
from the
it.
workshop,
Yeah.
yeah. Again, and two, here it's not requiring that an applicant go to open space. We know that that costs the money to pay for someone to go to meetings. So we're not requiring it, but we're saying, like, the open space is gonna take a peek at it and give you their input.
Yeah,
early
but
on.
like, is every have to go through the open space, or some of them don't have to go through the open space because it's already like, looking on the drawing, you understand that?
Yeah, open space asked that all of them go through them. That initially, we were thinking it would just be the residential open space that actually require that open space is set aside, and they would have input on where that goes.
Okay.
But they would also like to look at the other ones that are traditional subdivisions to speak to, like, if there are trails nearby, if there's other considerations they'd like the developer to think about, even if it's not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate that. I think we saw on a recent site visit that was not going to be a residential open space, just the connection to the existing trails is really
Yeah.
important.
I think that's a valuable thing that this town has, is so many trails, informal ones, more formal ones, and, you know, you might be adjacent to an open space subdivision that you could have some connectivity, and the more that happens, I think that's good for communities to have that green space connectivity, so.
Definitely. All right.
I liked it. I think, yeah, check boxes or
Excellent.
bullets instead
Yes.
of numbers.
Right, yeah. Yeah, this is just content for you.
Excellent.
Early, we'll work on design.
All right. And that is all she wrote. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All right.
It's not our fastest.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And
That was the fastest
7:18 PM.
Faster, but this
Fastest meeting I ever been
really
to.